Leo.
Hi, Nati. Thanks for joining me, friend.
Hi, Tashin. Nice to see you.
It's very good to see you, and I've been very much looking forward to this for many reasons. Uh, and I want to speak to those. I have loved meeting you in person recently, and I have admired you from afar for a long time. And as you know, I'm also quite close with Rich, and you are, as they say, his
Mhm.
better half. So as good as Rich is, I get to talk to Rich's better half for a couple of hours. Uh, So here we are, and I have so many questions, but I would love to start with the one I do ask everyone. And I know this is a big question,
Mhm.
but you can, of course, answer any way you like. But for me, when I'm
Mhm.
learning something, stories are so helpful, and framing the specifics of what I'm learning about in terms of story and who someone is as a person just helps me. Like, it feels like a fire hose of information comes into me that I just remember
Mhm.
because I can relate to it as story. So that's why I like to start here, because in some ways this podcast is like my school, and you get to be my teacher for a little bit, and
Mhm.
I will remember for a long time what you share and internalize it and make it part of my life and
Mhm.
be blessed by it. So starting with story helps me as a learner. um, so I'd love to hear from you about your life story in your own words, both what's happened factually, like as if it were a Wikipedia article, but also just how you make sense of it, what the story is you tell yourself about
Mhm.
who you are and how you became who you are. That's actually the most interesting thing to me. I know some facts about your life, I know other facts about other people's life, but if
Mhm.
I wanted to read a Wikipedia article, I'd read a Wikipedia article. I want to hear from the person how they see themselves and how they
Yeah.
came to be who they are. So I'd love to hear whatever you'd like to share about your life story.
Right. Okay. Are you ready? Because this is
I'm so
45
ready.
years in the making.
I'm strapped
So,
up. I'm in.
let, great. Let's see where this goes. Because I really like that approach about like what's the story that I tell myself about my story, right? And I think that has changed through the years. And there's times when it's like, oh, I gain new perspectives about it and new ways of seeing or serving it, or different parts of my story become more salient. So let's see which one shows up today because I did not prep for this. So we'll see. So
You
let's see.
prepared by being you your whole life.
I have prepared by being me, yes, indeed. So I was born in Argentina, Buenos Aires, and in 1980, so a long time ago. And I don't know, my parents were, like working class family. We lived in the suburbs of the city. Um, I played in the street when I was a child, being outdoors, it was definitely a thing. Climbing trees and playing with other kids in the street and stuff like that. Um, and both my parents worked since I was quite young because in Argentina, that's the way, even more so at this moment. But anyhow, so although I had some friends in the neighborhood and we played out, I still had quite a kind of like a lonely childhood. My sister is 6 years older. That you met her. We're quite different as well. Um, and I think that made me quite introspective. Like I spent a lot of time playing on my own and inventing stories. And I don't know, I loved Playmobiles, the little figurines. And I'll build like cities and towns and stories for these Playmobiles and stuff like that. Um, and then, yeah, I guess that growing up, I had this thing with the other kids at school. Um, where we were friends, but I always felt a little bit as an outsider. Like it was a bit like I couldn't really comprehend why they were doing certain things that they're doing, or the girls when they were more like teenagers and being all like, oh, let's go to the corner to see where the boys are standing and things like that. I don't know. I always felt a bit strange. It's like, why do humans do the things that they do? It seems weird to me. Anyhow, that's a little bit of the childhood side. Uh, then at uni, I decided to study filmmaking. I was really into arts, and then I guess my sister was working at that moment in like an advertising agency, And she was like, you know, filmmaking is good. You can make money because if you study art, you might not make any money. And how are you going to survive, kind of thing. And I was like, well, I guess I do like films. So it's an art side. And I go to uni to study that. And very soon after finishing my 3 years, I started working in the film industry. And I was there for like a few years and I hated it. I hated it to guts. I didn't like at all to go to work and be on set. The creative part was awesome and there were some really nice people, but the way the industry was working was just, I don't know, it was very hierarchical. You had to pay your entry fee, you know, like you had to work and be treated not very nicely when you started. And I was mostly working for advertising films. And so it was a lot about, you know, I don't know, spending tons of hours, the whole team being exhausted just to for a 3 minute commercial or less to sell, I don't know, yogurt or bread or something. And it just didn't make any sense to me to do that. And at that time, I think I started also to get into like spirituality and more Eastern philosophies and got hooked on meditation. And there was a point where it's like, well, what am I doing with my life? Like, why am I doing this terrible job that has zero meaning? And living in a city at that time, I was living in Buenos Aires already in the central city because working was easier there. In a little apartment, you know, in a huge building. I didn't know my neighbors. It, just the whole living situation didn't make much sense. The work didn't make much sense. And I discovered the ideas around intentional communities and permaculture. And I decided to go visit one of those communities that at the time was the Permaculture Center in Argentina. And kind of blew my mind. Like the first time that I went in, and it was like these people living in community, living with others in a beautiful environment in nature, growing their own food, being very respectful of their environment, of each other, sitting in circle, talking about how people felt, talking about, you know, like making decisions together. I was like, wow, you know, like I was just, yeah, just blew my mind. I was like, it's possible to live this way. You know, we don't have to be in like tiny apartment. We don't have to have a shitty job. We can just be nice to each other and to the land and just have something different. So I got really into that, and I did the permaculture course in that community. I kept on coming back when I could from the city to be there with them. They were really nice people. I made good friends there. And well, I guess that at the same time, in parallel, because I quit the film industry, I knew how to make clothing because my grandmother had taught me. And so I started to, like, I was an entrepreneur in a way, right? Started to make clothing and selling like designer markets or what's or not in the city. I made a little income. It wasn't much, but at least I could, you know, kind of pay rent and I had to do a few little jobs here and there. And I met some people at the community that they were from Peru and they were starting a community there. They had a piece of land and they were building with natural building and starting community. And they invited me to come over to help. And I was like, okay. I had never left Argentina then, apart from maybe traveling with my family, you know, to Brazil for a holiday or something. And I was like, okay, yeah, totally. I'm gonna come over. So I pack my backpack, close the apartment, and put everything in storage in my parents' house, and left Buenos Aires when I was 25, I think. And yeah, I never really went back to live in Buenos Aires. That was my exit from the country, from Argentina. I went back multiple times to visit, but didn't really stay. And I guess that's what I call in my life the university of life. Those years on the road, I spent around 4 years really on the road through South America, and then I came to Europe and traveling and kind of working in Europe, under the table in some places where I could. And then I went and spent like another year in India and Nepal, and then kept traveling, came back to Europe again to make some cash again under the table, picking fruit and working in kitchens and all of that. And then I had the chance to go to New Zealand with a working holiday visa. Like they give you this year where you can live and travel and work legally. And I had several friends going there. At the time, I was a full-on hippie, so I went to rainbow gatherings, and it was like the international rainbow gathering was happening in New Zealand. And I had some friends going, so I was like, okay, great, I'll come over with that visa. And got there when I was almost turning 30 already. And yeah, I guess that after a year of being there, decided to stay a bit longer. I had met someone, not rich, but another Kiwi boy, and I had a chance to stay. And I guess by then I was a bit tired of moving as much as I had been moving, of being quite unrooted. And I was like, well, this seems like a very nice place, very peaceful, very beautiful. People are super friendly. I can work legally. So yeah, I decided to stay. What else? That's the most recent history, I guess. But yeah, after a year of being there is, the relevant connection between us. That's where I met Rich. It was when the Occupy movement had sparked around the globe. And we started a camp in New Zealand, basically, in Wellington. And I joined the camp, and that's where we met with Rich, and where I met some of the other folks that later on we started the platform Lumio for decision making. And that's kind of it wasn't my first time, dealing with activism and things like that, but it was the first time that I was combining kind of what I had learned through my travel, through intentional communities, through my experiences, going to different places, with the more active side, with the work side of things, with, merging my entrepreneurial side with working in a team and stuff like that. So that's kind of like what sparked more or less the rest of my career and, and work until now, more or less. And what else? I guess that by then we were part of, Lumio and Inspiral, that is a network of different businesses working in this way as well, like very collaborative, very decentralized, very non-hierarchical. And Reach mostly was getting invited to a lot of conferences, and he was getting a little bit burned out in New Zealand. And we were like, well, why don't we travel? Why don't we take the chance and, go to the conference and spend a few months over there? We were together by then. And that's kind of how it started. We started to move between New Zealand and Europe. And we did that for a few years, where we'll come here for 3 months and we will go to some conferences. We will run some trainings about how is that we were organizing, what have we learned, what were our patterns, what worked, what didn't, things like that. And after a few years of doing that, it just was clear that it didn't make sense for us to be in New Zealand for, 3 or 4 months, and the rest of the time here, where the work was here. Europe at the time was more interesting to us as well. There was a lot going on. We were connecting with really amazing people, super interesting networks and projects and things. So we decided to move to Italy. And that's when pandemic hit. So we were then living in Italy in this tiny apartment where, we were in this community, beautiful place by the coast, south of Italy. And the idea was, well, this is the base. And then from here, we'll move to different cities for work, to work with clients and give workshops and so on. But when pandemic hit, it meant we were stuck in that little village where it was very little people. We knew no one. Not many people spoke English. My Italian was extremely basic. And that's where something sparked in me. And I was like, I remembered that I wanted to live in community and I wanted to be connected to the land, and that I kind of had forgotten about it a little bit. So I connected to some friends, some people that I had met in the community in Buenos Aires, where I studied permaculture, and some people that I met through my travels, and said, how about we talk about that idea of living in community and living in the land, and what would it look like? So we started to have calls during pandemic, the pandemic lockdown years. And then eventually, some of us were like, okay, great idea. Let's see what we can buy. Let's see how we can make this happen. What would it look like? The idea for me of having a retreat center in the middle that was a space for all of us to be using to run events and community and have travelers come and stay was very important, and that we could live in the land as well. So with Rich, we bought a motorhome and decided to travel through Europe. So we like, if we were to buy land, where will it be? What is the place where we might want to call home? Because Italy wasn't really the place for us. We didn't really feel that integrated in that community or anything. And through traveling, we came to Spain at some point, and we ran a little prototype of 3 months of having a space and running events. And it was just so easy to first do things in a language and, deal with all the logistics and bureaucracy in a language that I can speak and understand. And second, just Spanish people are just very friendly and open. And I don't know, I love their humor and, I don't know, things like that. And it's a beautiful nature and landscapes as well. And so we decided to come here to Catalonia. That is also a very active place. People, Catalonia are they're quite into their language and their culture and their projects and their community. They're quite, kind of like activists, some of them. There's also a big international community here, and the connection to other countries is very close and beautiful nature. So we came here, and that's how Casatilo started. And you came to visit, and we're in that part of the story that is now. So
how do you feel having said all this?
I feel like it was a long story, and also so many pieces that is so difficult to communicate in words. There's like images running through my head, and it's like, oh, and it's all that other part that I can name, but it will take forever. I was listening to it.
It was good. I liked it. It's one of my favorite parts of these conversations. I imagine that feeling both relieving, like, I've kind of put a lot on the table and said what's true. Like everything you said was true.
Yep.
And there's a relief to speaking the truth. And then also, I imagine it being kind of dissatisfying because of all of those threads. Like, oh man, there's so much here, and how do I even talk about that? And
there's a lot in there, but you can ask me questions, and we can dive into any piece that you might have more curiosity about. Yeah, that's your job.
Well, let's dive in from the beginning. let me think how to ask this question. So you grew up in Argentina.
Yeah.
I grew up in the States. Rich grew up in New Zealand. We
Hmm.
met in Europe. Uh, you have been all over the world in your life.
Hmm.
I've also traveled a fair bit, but I imagine, especially given American culture and its nature, its qualities, that there might be things that are obvious to you from your
Hmm.
background that would not be obvious to me as an American or to other Americans.
Hmm.
And I would be curious if anything comes up when I ask you about this.
That will be obvious to me about American culture
No,
or
about the
about
world or
what?
culture or humans
About the
or
world.
life. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I did not grow up in America, so I'm not
Hmm.
sure exactly what's obvious to you.
Well, you've met many
Um,
Americans, though.
I have met many Americans. Um, well, in a way, I'm an American too, but just from the South.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. I think like for me, traveling around, um, just understanding how different we all are as humans, and also how similar, you know. And there's so many different cultural aspects and different rituals and different languages and different dress codes. And it's enriching. And at the same time, at the core, we're just the same. We're all one the same. And connecting to all those people around the world has been, yeah, this I guess that's why I call it the University of Life. Because it was just I learned so much about humans and about myself specifically, and communicating with people that we didn't have the same language, but we can still communicate and interact in very small but beautiful ways, and just a smile or sharing some food or some signs or whatever it was. Um, it's just yeah, it's amazing. I think that if anything, the first world countries don't know how much beauty there is out there that doesn't
Mm-hmm.
because it doesn't look like you know um, a very Western capitalist society. It just looks like small people living their life in a small place with having been rich with everything except for material things, having community and having nature and having food and having love and rituals, and I don't know, it's just really amazing. I mean, you traveled a bit, right? So
Mm-hmm.
you have that sense probably as well.
I do, but I enjoy and have learned from hearing you speak to it. Uh,
Mm,
what was
yeah.
beautiful about your childhood and about Argentinian culture?
Mm. I think it surprised me when I was telling the story about talking about playing in the street. There's something about that I don't think has, unless you're in a small village, I don't think that happens anymore. Um, the being outside in the street, with a bicycle, or just with the other kids around, playing games, football games, and the doors of the house being open, and anyone coming in and out of any of those places, and that sense of community that I feel like is not so strong in other places. Um, and I think that was pretty beautiful, and that gave me probably some of the longing to have that again, or the longing to reinvent it in a way. And also, Argentinian culture, it is very warm and very friendly, and
Your sister is one of the
we're
most friendly people I've met in years.
yeah, you see. And yeah, the fact that we say hi and goodbye with a cheek, kiss on the cheek, like European cultures do that as well, but to perfect strangers, and you give a hug to anyone. There's something about that as well that I think that is very beautiful. I'm half, my family background is half Italian and half Spanish, and somewhere along the line there's a sprinkle of French. So it's all the Latin countries together. And that most of Buenos Aires, at least, has that configuration. And it's a very strong connection to family in a way. A lot of families live more or less in the same area. So, growing up, going to my grandma's house every Sunday and having all the uncles and aunties and cousins, and we will all hang out. And yeah, I don't know. That's something that maybe doesn't happen so much in other cultures. That I do, yeah, I do think it's beautiful.
Do you find yourself missing the places that you've lived but are not now?
I think so. Yeah, I think in a way I do. Hmm. I think maybe I miss specific times and specific interactions or specific people, not so much the place in itself, but the people and the experiences that I had in places. Yeah, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that brought up sadness for me because I know exactly what you mean, and
Hmm.
that's what I miss too.
Hmm.
Mm.
Yeah, yeah. I
Mm.
think, recently I've been talking a bunch about this idea of, I think I just named it, the reinventing the village. Um, I think I'm going to speak for myself, but as a nomad and as a traveler and as a person that lived in a lot of places and at the same time feeling very unrooted, because even in Argentina, I don't feel like I am from Argentina anymore. But then I'm not from anywhere else because I'm a collection of a lot of different pieces of culture and people and things that I acquired, and I that makes me who I am. And but it doesn't have that sense of, I am from this place or
Mm-hmm.
whatever it is. And I think that there is this move of, new community spaces, villages or whatever it is, and we're trying a little bit to reinvent that. Like, the fantasy of, can I get all of these beautiful people that I met around the world, and can we all live together in close proximity, and you know and then everything's gonna be great.
Mm.
Yeah.
I'm torn between asking you about your sister and asking you about Rich. Which would you prefer first?
Hmm. Ask me about Rich.
Tell me about how you met him and what you liked about him and how you fell in love with him.
Hmm.
And
Okay.
this is
Yeah.
a vulnerable question to answer, so I should meet you. Uh, I want to get married,
Tell me.
and you two are like absolute
Oh,
marriage goals. Not the sole couple I admire. There are others as well, but like I think you have a
great.
really good thing going. So this helps me to learn about
Hmm.
what works and what doesn't.
Yeah. Let's see. So yeah, we met at Occupy. So um, revolution love is always quite intense.
Uh-huh.
Um, we met in the camp, and although Occupy, the idea was there's no leaders, there's no one, we're all in this together. There was still a core crew of folk that were kind of in camp all the time and
Mm-hmm.
running the things and running meetings and organizing more than others, and we were some of those. Actually, between the two of us, we wrote the manifesto for our camp. And I guess that was our first collaboration.
Mm-hmm.
I just remember it in a way. Um, so it was something about needing in that moment in time, sharing all these ideas and all this, we're going to change the world feeling. Um, and I guess I thought he was extremely smart, as
Uh-huh.
he is. And I was very interested, and also very unique way of seeing the world and communicating. I always liked slightly unusual people, uh, and he was one of those. And also, he was hot. He's still
Uh-huh.
hot. And at the time I was poly. I had another partner. That's the one that I stayed in New Zealand for, and I was really into that world. And we started to talk about it. He didn't have much perspective on that. He didn't know much about it. It was at a time where it wasn't very popular like it is now. It wasn't much of a thing. Um, and so the beginning of our relationship was a bit messy, as I think maybe you know a bit of the story.
I really
Uh,
don't. Or I've
oh,
forgotten
okay,
if someone's
okay,
told me, but I don't think so.
okay. It was a little bit messy. We had, yeah, we weren't very close after camp for a while. I call him my intermittent friend because he'll show up and then disappear and then show up again and disappear again. Um, but still, like every time we hang out, it was like, I don't know, I was really sparked my brain in a lot of ways. And we were always had super interesting conversations. And it was always around the revolution, right? How are we going to change the world? And what does it mean? What does it mean to be human? I don't know, a lot of different things. Um, and eventually, it wasn't too many years after, but after Occupy Amend, I joined Lumio as the co-op. And that's when we actually kind of started to see each other more, yeah, more officially, if you want to say, or something. I don't know. We became more permanent lovers. Um, and and yeah, I think like it was a bit challenging at the beginning, the relationship. Um, but I think there was always this thing, and maybe that's why we stuck together, where things weren't great, maybe, but we both had desire to grow and change, um, and we were willing to do that together. And I think that's why we're still together. We're quite different in many ways, but very complementary. So I think
Mm-hmm.
that's why it works well.
Mm-hmm.
And we pretty much always work together as well. It's not we're not just partners in life, but also in work.
Mm-hmm.
And um, yeah, I do sometimes wonder if we didn't work together, will we still be together? There's
Mm-hmm.
something about our collaboration that kind of binds us too.
Mm-hmm.
But I think we will. I would think we'll still be together.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, I don't know if that answers much of your question, but you can
Oh,
ask
it
me more.
does, and it makes I have 10,000 questions. I'm reminded of my hero, Peace Pilgrim, who's been a teacher to me, even though I never
Mm-hmm,
met her. And I'm
mm-hmm.
under the impression, and I believe she spoke about this, but I'm under the impression that she was kind of a pain in the ass in her early life.
Ah,
That she was very stubborn and like black and white thinking and very like
mm,
insistent that she knew the right way and other people didn't. And that she would be annoying about that. And
mhm,
she had kind of this like shrill voice I find unpleasant to listen to. Um, and I imagine, correct me if I'm wrong, but I imagine that Rich
mm.
was kind of a pain in the ass when you met him. And I wonder if that's true or if not or what.
I think we probably were both a pain in the ass in different ways.
Hmm.
And
Tell
it's
me
part
about
of,
that.
I think it's part of growing up. It's
Uh-huh.
kind of growing up, probably. I think I was more like what you described of
Hmm.
your person, right? Um, just very enraged by all the things that were wrong in the world, and there was right way of being and doing and being in the world, and very much into telling people about it. uh, I grew out of that, luckily. And I think for him, he had the same, and that's probably why we clicked. um and I think maybe what was a little bit uh annoying, I'll say, about him is he was not very emotionally intelligent at that time. He was 27 when we met. He was still growing up a lot, and I was growing up a lot. But I think that that's how we complemented each other and we helped each other grow. I think he learned some stuff from me, more on the emotional realm and being human. And I learned things from him more about the world and being more brainy and intellectual, um, and we supported each other that way, and we still do.
Mm. In case it's not obvious to anyone listening, that question I just asked comes from tremendous amount of love and respect for Rich. So,
Yeah,
and frankly, knowing that I'm a pain in the ass. So, there's
aren't
hope
we
for
all?
me. Apparently, Rich's mom says something like, every uh, pot has a lid. So
Yeah.
that's brought me hope for some time since I heard this quaint, cute, pithy aphorism. Uh, anyway, and I do think you two complement each other quite well. And I'll
Mm,
ask you more about that in time, I suppose. But
sure.
um,
Yeah.
I'd love to talk about activism. And
Mm-hmm.
this is coming from really a care about the world. Peace Pilgrim actually said that unless we do our part with collective
Mm-hmm.
problems,
Mm-hmm.
something like we won't really be happy or fulfilled. And we
Mm-hmm.
can't just solve our own individual problems. We have to do our part to solve collective problems. That
Mm-hmm.
said, I think it's much easier for me to solve personal problems, local problems, community problems that are collective, but not quite like global. And I think so many of us have a real care for global problems and a lot of confusion about what to do. And
Mm-hmm.
I imagine that from your activism era, you're both connected to that care for the world and have a lot of hard earned lessons about what works and what doesn't and how you
Mm-hmm.
think about that. And I would be so curious to hear what got you into activism, what you loved, what worked, what didn't, anything like that. I'd love to hear from you.
Yeah. Okay, let's see. There's a lot of pieces there, so we're gonna have to
Yes.
backtrack here because it's
Yes.
also getting a little bit late over here and I'm getting a
Mm-hmm.
bit tired. But
Mm-hmm.
um, what got me into activism, I think, well, I come from Argentina, right? Let's start with that. Things were never too easy over there. Like I was born the year where democracy was back into being a thing in Argentina, right? We came from years of dictatorship. Um, so activism is a very big part of being an Argentinian in a way. Um, at least if you're, more left or progressive inclined. And there were tons of times through my life in Argentina where there were a lot of crises. Like there was a really big one. I keep forgetting dates because I'm bad at that, but I think it was 2001. Maybe some people heard that the banks decided there was a lot of fluctuation with the currency. Inflation was going crazy, and the president of the time decided that we could not maintain a one-on-one with the dollar, and we had to devalue the coin. And so people freaked out, and they wanted to go into the bank and take their money out. Right, this is the classic setup of any financial crisis. Um, and so the banks decided that they were going to lock all the accounts and no one will be able to access their money. And that suddenly all those dollars that you had were not valued in dollars anymore. And they were all devalued into whatever the local currency was at the time. And that was a very big crisis. And at the time I was 21. So I had more of a sense of what was happening and was more engaged in the politics of the place. And probably, I don't know if people heard of that, but there was this movement that started in Buenos Aires where we called it a cacerolazo. Every time the president will come out, on public television to give a speech about what was happening, people will start banging cooking pots out of the windows to kind of, protest. And there were multiple times where there will be protests where people from all over will start flooding the central city and go outside the governmental, at the governmental house in the central city and protest to get the government to change what was happening, to do something about the banks. They were doing nothing. So I think that was a big part of me forming me into activism, right? Seeing that things were fucked and we had to do something. And if citizens didn't do something, nothing would change. That protest ended up with tons of people dying because the police repression was very strong. They will actually just shoot bullets into the street. But after, I think it was a couple of weeks of protest, the president left. And there was the sense of, this is hard, but if we come together, we can change things. That was very ingrained in me. To be like, oh, it's not just pointless. We can actually change things if we organize together. And I think that then I started traveling years later, I carried that. I was very concerned about climate change from a quite young age. I was very concerned about the state of what we were doing to nature, what we were doing in the environment. And but I think that what changed over the years was starting from a place of focusing on everything that was wrong and trying to change what was wrong, to focusing on what we could do about it and how we can create something different. And I think that part of, spending time in eco-villages and communities and learning about different ways of building and different ways of growing food and different ways of interacting with humans just kind of gave me that shift that over the years made me think more about, yes, all of this is wrong, but it's not about that. It's how do we build a system that is different? How do we become people that are different? So then things can change. So then when whatever system we have collapses, we have something that holds us that is different, and we can build a different way of living, kind of thing.
It sounds like you had an initial theory of change of what would work as an activist that got really dramatically changed. And you kind of spoke just now to how you see it now.
Yeah, definitely. And I think part of then building Lumio and having the ham, running trainings, and this house and all the community building efforts through micro solidarity and Inspiral is all about that in a way. It's about building a different way. It's not about let's complain about this, let's boycott that. It's more like, okay, how do we do something different? Yeah. I remember reading a while back, I don't even remember the exact words, but it was from Joanna Macy. And she was talking about, kind of the context was talking about the world is going to change, and climate change is a reality. We're not going to be able to stop that, but what we can do is learn to treat each other differently. So when everything crashes or everything collapses, we will have a different society emerging. And I think that really resonated with me at the time, and I grabbed onto that for my work and what I do and how I show up in the world. Yeah.
So Casatilo is a vote for the better future you want to live in.
Yeah. Attempting it, at least, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of learning that I'm still having myself, and a lot of ways in which we are experimenting and failing and learning and changing.
And succeeding very
well.
And
succeeding.
I'm impressed.
Oh.
And especially with the type of project that you're trying to do, that I am impressed. To me, I mean, I'm biased obviously, but speaks highly to the project because I've been unimpressed by many other similar endeavors. So,
yeah. Ooh, now you're spiking my curiosity, but I can't ask questions. So
yes, well, help me here because you're getting tired and it's late. And there's at least two things I want to make sure to ask you about. and so
Mm-hmm.
much I would love to talk about. But I do want to talk about Casatilo, and I also would love to
Yeah.
talk about psychedelics. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and there's more that I would love to talk about, but those two, I feel like we owe it to ourselves to talk about Casatilo and psychedelics. So, um,
Definitely. Yes.
how do you think we should proceed?
Hmm. Well, I guess we talked a little bit about Casatilo, and
Hmm.
people might know about that better. So we could talk about psychedelics because that's, one of my
Hmm.
favorite topics. So
Uh-huh.
I'm always happy. But
Okay,
we'll see how it goes. Yeah.
great. Well,
We
let's
might
start with
combine or come
psychedelics
back.
then.
Yeah.
Um,
What's your question, sir?
well, many people, including people who might be in this recorded conversation, have taken psychedelics in their life. I've taken psychedelics. I love psychedelics. They're very different. Different ones are different, but
Hmm.
different relationships with different ones. But
Yeah.
they've been such a net positive in my own life.
Uh-huh.
And uh, I'm under the impression you do some kind of guiding work. And so I'd love to hear about your work and your own relationship with them. Anything you'd like to share either about your work or what these medicines have been in your life.
Mm. Yeah. Okay. You like stories, and this
I
is a
love
whole part of the
stories. Let's
of the
go.
story of my life with psychedelics. So maybe I'll tell you how I came to them,
Yes,
or they
please.
came to me, or both. Um, the first time that I tried a empathogen substance, and when I was young, I was still in Argentina. Um, I loved it, of course, and I had the most amazing time just lying on a beach, looking at the waves move and the seagulls arrive and leave, and just being in that moment, fully present, fully in love with life. And I knew that experience well because I had had some spiritual experiences that felt that way. And I knew that psychedelics, that time I was like, this is going to be a big thing in my life. And I should be careful because I can get very hooked on this as well. But I never had much of a very addictive personality, so it wasn't too bad. And I tested a lot of different substances while traveling as well and experimenting with them. And I always had this curiosity, I think, that it was, like experiencing it and being really in the experience that it was giving me, and also having this meta of understanding, like, what were they doing in my mind and how they were acting, and what they can do in general. So it has that this interaction, kind of observing it as a researcher in a way, although I'm not a researcher. um and I had used them sporadically. And New Zealand, I spent 10 years in New Zealand. It's not a very easy place to find substances. They're not good quality because it's difficult to get things there. So I didn't use it much. But I had a brain injury, but I think you know that piece of my story as well, around 10 years ago, a little bit more. And after that, it was kind of hard to recover for quite a while. It took a while to come back to some sort of, cognitive okayness. And on my recovery journey, I was looking for what could be things that could help me improve my cognition mostly, and my energy levels, and yeah, and deal with what it was like. Um, and I had friends that were very involved with those substances from the Psychedelic Society in the UK. And they were like, well, have you considered using mushrooms for the neuroplasticity effect that it has? And, they're neurogenetics, so they create more dendrites in your neurons and they help create new connections. And that really sparked my interest. So I went back into using substances for my recovery, basically. And it definitely did help me a lot. Like, I think mushrooms helped me to recover cognitively and make new connections. I also did empathogens for with Rich as well, is our couples therapy. That's kind of known. I think Rich talks a bunch about that.
Mm-hmm.
But I think I also helped me cope with the trauma of it was an accident, and like all that came from having an injury and being years where basically I was almost diagnosed with chronic fatigue. And I think part of it was definitely physical. And I'm still, learning new things and adjusting. But part of it was definitely like, my nervous system and my just being a bit in shock, and using those substances to heal myself was amazing. And after a while of using them, and I think I saw someone online offering, this is several years ago, offering like a group integration session and thinking about using these substances more like therapeutically. That's what I was using. And that sparked something in me. And I was like, this is what I want to do. I want to help others use these substances to heal, but also to know themselves better and grow and develop as individuals. And that is when, I started doing a bunch of courses online, learning more about the substances, but learning on, how to help people through the use of them. Then more recently, I decided to get a license as a counselor. So I'm starting to be a counselor to be able to work with the substances in a legal container in the future once they become more legal across the world. So that's how I came to them and how I work with them. And basically, I support people to understand how to use them well. And they're not a magic bullet either. They're not like, as you take some substance and you're cured. There's a lot of personal work that needs to come into them, but they do certainly open doors to more, better understanding and better healing and deepening of oneself. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. They've been you've seen them have positive impacts on yourself and others. What would you say to someone who hasn't taken them, is scared of them, thinks that they're addictive, thinks that they're evil or bad? What would you say to someone like that?
I mean, I think that as everything, they are tools as well. It is how you use them. They could be bad if you abuse them. They could be bad if they're the wrong substance for you, or if you're taking medications, or if you have certain health conditions that they're contraindicated for it. So it's more about learning about them and using them with respect, and getting support, especially if you're scared or never used them before. Just being supported into understanding how to build a relationship with the right substances. Yeah.
Well, we've covered so much territory and we've opened up so much. I really feel like I could ask you 1,000 questions, but I want to respect your time and your energy. And yeah, at this time, if you want to talk about something more that I didn't ask you about, or you want to ask questions and have it be more two directional, I'd love to be here. I can be here for as long as you like, but also happy to wind down and let you go to bed. Whatever's good for you.
Let's see. I guess that because we are talking about the substances, I am curious as well to hear your perspective and your approach to using them well, or your curiosities with it.
Well, they've been a big part of my life. They've been a net positive. I think when I started them, I thought of them as drugs because that was the frame that came to me. This was a big developmental thing for me because in middle school there was a class, DARE, drug education class, that was literally led by a cop. And it was basically indoctrination, and almost all of it was lies. But I really believed it at the time. And then in high school, my friends started using these substances, and I was just like, my mind was blown. I was like, why would you do it? They told us those are bad. Why would you do that? Um, and then they were like, well, you should go do some research, bro. Like, there's the internet. And I was like, okay, fair. So I did some research and just realized that like 95% of what I'd been told had been a lie, and that I couldn't trust adults or society to tell me the truth. And that made me open to trying them. It also made me very suspicious of authority because I'd really bought in middle school. I was like, yeah, obviously these everything is addictive and bad and evil, and you shouldn't do it. Um, so I started with marijuana and mushrooms and LSD in high school, and those were net positive experiences for me. Really opened me up. I think LSD and mushrooms in particular really showed me that there are altered states of consciousness, and that made me curious about meditation. For most of my 20s, I didn't do psychedelics. And then as I left the monastery, this is a simplification, but as I left the monastery, I basically started doing them again. Nowadays, I think of them more as medicines than drugs, and I really view them as relationships. And, we talked about polyamory and monogamy, and the way it's interesting, the way I've related to women and medicines is very similar in that I'm not married. uh, I have known many women, I have known many medicines, but I really like to focus on one at a time and like really learn everything I can from one woman or one medicine. And it works better for me if I really focus on one at a time. And also, uh, seeing them as relationships, it's really clear to me, and you alluded to this, but some of these substances or medicines are really good for one person or really good for one person at a certain time and not good for either a different person or the same person at a different time. So there have been substances that were good for me at a certain time in my life but are no longer good. There are ones that have never been good that's like Tashin shouldn't touch these. There are ones I wouldn't touch if you paid me to, and there are ones that are like almost always wholesome for me, that are very good to me, and everything in between, from like I would never do that to like I would do this as much as I possibly can, to like a lot in between, and it's very contextual. Um, yeah, so and exploring this continues to be a big part of my life. Uh, I love these days 5-MeO DMT, or upaya as I like to call it. When I was in Europe, I took a substance known as 5-MAPB, which is a incredible medicine. I love MDMA. I've written publicly about my relationship with MDMA and what it's done for me. That really changed my life. I experience it subjectively as the Tashin you are speaking to is a totally different person than the person who had not taken MDMA. Like I had a very black and white phase shift for the better in 2021, in May of 2021. I call it the day I was born, from MDMA. Uh, yeah, so it's an important topic to me. It's dear to my heart, and I do think it warrants caution, care, ethics, consideration. I trust myself to weigh all of that quite well, but it's kind of a mess out there, especially with laws, and some of these substances are addictive. Some of them do cause problems or have contraindications, and um, it's not simple.
It's definitely not. And um, I think that because of all the regulations that were put in place, it's even kind of more dangerous, right?
Totally.
Especially like, I mean, you're in the US, right, where fentanyl is running rampant through the scene,
Yes.
and it just makes it, yeah, makes it more difficult because then there's less knowledge, there's less education, there's less support for people that might need it. With
Hmm.
substances that could be extremely useful for a lot of people for healing, you know. So yeah, I have hope though that more things are becoming more legal. There's more research. There's more knowledge being put out there. But
Hmm.
yeah,
I think talking openly and honestly about it is a
hmm,
medicine for our culture also. So
yeah,
I'm glad we're talking
yeah,
about it.
yeah. I do have actually on my website for the guide work. I have a little free downloadable PDF with some tips
Hmm.
and tricks. it's quite simple and short, but yeah, if people want to find it,
Hmm.
yeah, they'll be there. I'll
Hmm.
pass you the link later so you can share it.
Yes, I'll put it in the show
Yeah.
notes. Um,
Mhm.
can you tell me about this leadership retreat in May at Casa Tila?
Yes, you're coming, correct?
That's the plan.
Great. Sweet. So yeah, so that's with our hum company, the hum, with
And what
Reach.
is the hum?
So
You did not mention the hum until
yeah,
this point. I know what the hum is, but for
you
the
know what the
benefit
hum
of those
is.
that
Yeah.
don't.
Yeah. So the hum is basically came out of our experience with Lumio and Inspiral, and it's like a sibling of micro solidarity in a way. But it's for teams and organizations. So it's for people that want to know how to collaborate better, for teams that want to organize without traditional hierarchy and find new ways of doing things. So we've been doing training and consulting and coaching, and we run team retreats and everything else, and for like more than a decade with it. And yeah, we're running a training here at Casatilo in May, collaborative leadership. And it's going to be we're running it, Rich and me and Corina, that is another person from our team, a good friend, and that she's been a leader of a few NGOs. So has tons of experience as well. Um, and the idea is to look at what are the different patterns, what are the different skills, what are the things that we have to improve on our ways of living when we want to work in a more collaborative way. And it's going to be very practical. It's going to be some teaching or some lessons or content in the morning, but then in the afternoon it's going to be like putting it into practice, role playing, having little groups, and each group is going to have to organize as a little team to run things. So I think it's going to be pretty interesting.
Hmm.
I'll also give you the link later, although you have it. It's going to be nice to have you here if you can make it. Yeah.
If it's the will of God, I will be there. So, uh,
Yes. Yes. I'll have
is
to
there
talk to
anything
God
that I
then.
should be thinking about or doing to prepare in advance, do you think?
I think, as usual, maybe some reflection, although we're going to do that here as well, but some reflection about what are the skills that you want to improve on your
Mm-hmm.
leadership path. What are
Mm-hmm.
your strengths and what are your challenges? And probably getting some feedback from people
Mm-hmm.
that you've been leading or organizing with,
Mm-hmm.
um, to help you balance, like self-reflection needs the balance from the other person. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
so that could help. Yeah.
Great. Collecting feedback and reflecting internally.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
About
Very doable.
what areas do you want to deepen into?
I want to bring people either from the guild with me or my
Oh,
allies
great.
who are also leaders.
Hmm. Great.
I want to bring as many people as possible that are like in this network, and
Yeah.
I think it's going to be important. So I need to
Mhm.
be there.
Yes.
Hmm.
And also, it'll be great to have you in the house again and
Yes, I
hang
loved
out.
my time there. It was
Yay.
very healing and clarifying and helpful and restorative and
Mm.
generative and all of the good things. I can't wait to come back. So,
Yeah.
mhm. Mm. Well, thank you so much for honoring my curiosity and answering my many
Mm.
questions and meeting me where I'm at. And I know it's vulnerable to talk about one's life, and
Mm.
especially in a recorded conversation. And there's so much that we talked about that's actually very deeply personal and intimate. And I really know that, and I'm grateful that you shared so much and so
Mm.
freely. And I really learned a lot in this conversation. And I also feel I believe the work you and Rich are doing is very important. I want to support it. And I also sense that this is the first of many recorded conversations, and a lot. There's a long, lifelong relationship here, as far as I can tell. So I'm grateful. This really helps me to frame a lot of and be make myself ready and be receptive to learning as much as I can from you over many years. So thank you.
Well, that's lovely. Thanks, dear. Yeah. Thank you for your curiosity and for listening intently and yeah, and your friendship. I
Hmm.
already feel it,
Hmm.
although we met very briefly. But
I
yeah,
was
I'm
so
very excited
pleased.
for more chats. Yeah.
I said this in October or November or whenever it
Hmm.
was I was there, but like it felt like a big win because I think if I had met you earlier, I've known about you since 2019 and we met in
What?
2025. And if I had met you even 2024, even early 2025, I think it would not have gone well. And I've been
Why? Oh,
preparing and
Lord.
training for so long.
Okay, now
I
that
think,
sparked so much more curiosity.
well, I don't want to take too much of your time, but I can answer if you're,
No.
if,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Well, it comes back to your sister.
Ah.
Um, So my one of my special interests right now is typology because I really want to understand people and how different
Hmm.
they are. And my
Hmm.
subjective experience last year was something like
Hmm.
there's a whole class of people where everything is great and fine and smooth and amazing, and there's a whole class of people where like everything goes sideways and I talk to them and I don't understand them and they don't understand me and like what the fuck is happening. And so typology is a way for me to try and make sense of how vastly different people are. And I'm still learning about it. It's very early, but in my own thinking, I started to collect all of these polarities of, oh, people are more like this or more like this. And with a polarity, it's like obviously overly simplistic. Like people are incredibly
Hmm.
complex and nuanced, and you are not like anyone else. And it's
Hmm.
really helpful to be like, oh, they're more like this than like that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so in my proto typological thinking, in the way I see it, you are a cat and Rich is a dog, and your
Oh, wow.
sister is a dog. I'm a dog. And the thing about dogs is we're very high energy, we're very friendly, we're very approachable, but we love to scare cats just by being who we are. And I have scared many cats in
Uh,
my life, and I have learned how to not scare physical animal cats, but it has taken me a long time to learn how to relate to people who are, you know, more internal, more cautious, slow to trust, suspicious of people, like have well earned distrust of humans. Um, and it would have been just so easy for me earlier in my life to be like, Nati, you're amazing. Like, tell me everything. You're great. Like, and you would find that like unearned, obnoxious, like probably you'd feel like I was flattering you in a manipulative way. Like you just have a big ick and like run away and not want to talk to me. Um, and I think we did really well in our week together. I like
we
let you
did.
have your space. I let you come
Yeah.
to me. I like let you set the pace of when you were ready to talk to me. And I learned so much from you in that week. I don't think you know how much I learned from you, but it was very helpful. And you and Rich together, I love Rich. Rich has been such a blessing in my life for many years now.
Mhm.
But when you two are together, you two are unstoppable. And I trust the two of you and
Uh,
respect the two of you together even more than I respect either of you individually, which is very high. And so
wow.
it's
That
like a
is high
cross
praise.
multiplier. Yeah, because I really trust Rich to have so much experience and so much thought and so much care about me and like want me to succeed and to really see me
Hmm.
in all these ways.
Yeah.
And then there's ways that I really trust you to just like really see me in a way that is harder for Rich, I think. And,
Mm.
you're patient, Rich is excited, all these things. And that together is just like I trust the two of you to help me even more than either of you individually. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Oh, I love that. I love hearing that. And I love the analogy with cats and dogs. I'm not really a cat person in myself, but
Uh-huh.
that says a
Like you
lot.
don't like physical
I
animal
I don't
cats.
have physical
Yeah.
animal cat. Well, I do, but
Sure.
but it does. Yeah.
Hmm.
I felt seen when you said all the things like, oh, you know so well.
Uh-huh. I've been preparing for a long time.
Yes, I see. I
Yes.
see. I see that now. Thank you for
Yes.
preparing for that. And I'm
Yes.
very glad that we met. I think like probably if you had met me before my brain injury, we would have matched in the
Mm.
dog
Mm.
energy. But
Mm.
definitely that was a huge personality shift in my life.
Totally.
That made me a very
What do you
different
remember your
person.
personality being like before?
I was extremely energetic. I always had tons of different ideas, and I was starting
Hmm.
new projects constantly, and very chatty, very. I was always like had this introversion thing in me, and very like self-reflective and stuff like that. But I was a lot more willing to be out there and connect with people all the time. And I think through the years of brain injury and chronic fatigue, I just had to learn how to be more patient with
Mm.
myself and with my energy levels and regulate myself way more and be like, well, if I use all this energy right now, I am not going to have it later for whatever I need it for. So I had to be like, I learned how to be a lot more like, I'm going to go now and have a break and then I
Hmm.
can socialize again. Um,
Hmm.
and probably lots of other things that I cannot even remember anymore how I used to be. But yeah,
I love knowing that. And I think also, to be fair to both of us, I was being a little bit hyperbolic for the point of like getting my point
yeah,
across. And
yeah,
I
of course,
suspect if we had met at other points, like it would have been fine. It just would have
yeah,
not. I think it went really well meeting you. And
very well,
um, yeah. And this has also gone well. I've loved this conversation. So thank you
yeah,
again. And
me
I'll let
too.
you go so you can get some sleep. But thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you,
Yeah.
and yeah, I'm looking forward for you coming over, and I'll love if we could record an interview with you when you're here.
Oh,
Maybe
I'd love
Rich
that.
and you and me just have a chat, a long chat, and we'll record it live.
Oh, I would love that so much. Let's try to do that. Yeah.
Let's do that. Yeah,
Okay. All
perfect.
right.